So that was quite straightforward, little bit of soldering there. We've got our receiver connected and a bit of heat shrink around it as well. We've got our VTX connected, the cable, and they're connected directly to the camera, and the camera's fitted in the canopy. Now we haven't put all this together yet for a very important reason, because we want to plug it in for the first time. We checked everything over, we want to plug it in for the first time, but there's no point screwing it all together just in case something happens and we need to take it all apart and sort out a wire or a solder or something's not working properly. So we're going to use one of these guys here, which is a smoke stopper that I bought. Basically, if we get the LED on, the circuit's okay. If it's off, you're getting a short circuit, and if it's dim, then we've got a fuse tripped. So basically we want to see a solid LED on when we plug this in. Also, I'm going to do the binding process on my transmitter here at the same time, because this particular receiver doesn't have a button that you hold in when you power it for the first time. If it doesn't connect straight away to a receiver, it goes into binding mode. So that's what we're going to do at the same time. So let's plug this in and activate bind mode, and then plug it in and hope for a green light, which is what we got, and we're bind as well with the yellow light there. So if we turn the power off, we're getting a flashing light, so it's fail-safing. And if we turn it on again, solid light, that means it's connected, and everything else is powered on, and our light on our smoke stopper is fully green, so that means the circuit's okay. So we can disconnect that. So we have our transmitter connected up nicely. We know that we're going to be getting, so unplug that. We know that we're not going to be making any fires, our circuit's fine. Our receiver's connected, really straightforward to connect that receiver. Barely took any time at all. Normally you've got to hold like a tiny little button with one hand and then try and connect up a lipo with the other hand, which can be extremely awkward. But with this little guy, that's worked really well. So that's a really useful little receiver connected up. So what I need to do now is plug it into Betaflight configurator, set up all my ARM switches and all the other bits and pieces that I need to set up, buzzer and the OSD, and make sure that the UARTs are switched on to the right one. So UART 1 will be switched on to our smart audio, and UART 2 will be switched on to serial RX, and then we'll go in and tell Betaflight that we're using an iBus receiver, and then hopefully we'll get a nice connection. We'll set everything else up, and then we'll screw it all together nice and neatly once that's done. So there's no point doing it at the moment. We certainly do not want to put our props on, certainly when we fire up the motors for the first time, just to make sure that our motors are going in the right direction. Now if they're not, we've got two options. We can go into BL Heli configurator and we can change the direction there, or we can swap two of the connections on the wires. We can desolder, say, two wires and resolder them up. So we've got wires 1, 2 and 3 on pads 1, 2 and 3. The motor will go one way. If we want it to go the other, we desolder, say, pads 2 and 3, and we swap them round. So it then go wire 1 is on pad 1, wire 2 is on pad 3, and wire 3 is on pad 2. They cross over just those two pads, and then the motor will go in the opposite direction. So that's quite a straightforward way of doing it if you don't want to go into BL Heli configurator and do that. So there we are. Great little model. Once I've set all that up, I'll then show you the final model, and obviously a bit more flying, especially with a scene at the beginning of this video. We'll continue on with some more flights as well in that video. So there we are. We're almost there on the home straight. Plug into the computer, some mucking about with BL Heli configurator and Betaflight configurator, and then we should be able to get this flying. Now I won't be able to cover any of that in a video, unfortunately, set up how to record the screen, how to make it look something. But to be honest, the way you set up this little quad in Betaflight configurator will be exactly the same as you set up any other quad. It's all the same process. The build process is different from this little quad, but when you plug it into Betaflight configurator, it won't look any different to Betaflight configurator to this massive 5-inch quad that I've got here, with motors that are, you know, pretty much the same size as the flight controller on that little guy. So I'm going to try and if I can in future videos, but at the moment I can't do that. But there are plenty of videos online that show that. So there we are. Hopefully you've enjoyed these videos. We'll sort out getting it programmed properly, and we'll come back with a finished little quad and have a little chat about then, and perhaps have some flights as well. So here we are with the finished quad, which you would have already seen from the very first video that we did, but it's come together really nicely. I think you'll agree. A little bit tall perhaps, but that shouldn't affect the centre of gravity too much. Flies very nicely for a little quad, and yeah, you can see we've used some cable ties to attach the antenna there. A little glued on a little piece of cable tie there, just a piece cut off, and then a little bit of heat shrink just to hold the receiving antenna there. So yeah, I think you agree, it looks very, very nice and flies quite nicely as well. And we can record our footage in the onboard DVR, which is, so you can see there, and the button's nice and easy to get to on the front there. There's the button for the DVR, and there's the button to change our VTX channels, etc. So yeah, very nice little build, goes together very nicely. So what's the most important question? Well, how much does it weigh? So we have our kitchen scales here. Reset. Not as accurate perhaps as other scales, but we get a good idea. So what's the weight quad coming? 67 grams, and with a little 2S lipo, 86. So perhaps a little bit heavier than we'd like. We want to be closer to the 75 gram mark with a little quad like this. It's going to not handle as well as it could do perhaps, but still not too bad weight wise. But just as a comparison, we'll come to another quad in a second, so we can see the weight there. And this is a little toothpick build, and this is coming in at 74 grams. So you can see the difference in weight there, which really comes down to, let me move this out of the way, it comes down to our canopy and sort of little extra bits like having the VTX. It's slightly heavier with the VTX with a DVR in it, so we've got a memory card in there, extra weight. We've got the little capacitor on the XT30, more weight. The frame's a little bit thicker, a bit chunkier, more weight, but this is slightly harder wear. I mean, you can see there's very little flex in the frame there at all. It's very strong, very nice little design, the Speed Racer. So yeah, very nice little quad. But there are things that we can change with this, as we've already just seen. We've gone through the process, we built this little quad, it flies very nicely. I think on this quad it will fly better with bigger props. Now we put these little guys on here, these little 2-inch props. If we can squeeze 2.5-inch, certainly bi-blades would be fine on the 1103. Same bi-blades I've got on that quad I've just shown. That will improve things as well. We get that more lift from slightly bigger props. Always try and get the largest props that you can on the model. But for this, what we're showing here, this flies quite gently, so it's easier for beginners. You'll get that more power if you use the slightly bigger props, but I'm not sure I'd necessarily recommend putting a 2.5-inch tri-blade prop on here, just because these motors are a little small. But certainly 65mm bi-blade would be excellent, and they're the props that actually come with this frame. Now this frame is good, it's very strong, very tough, nice little design with a really nice canopy. I love these canopies, these are brilliant, really good. And the 3D printed canopies are probably some of the best that I've certainly seen anyway. Really nice, especially with little touches like on the fin there with the little hole, just so you can attach your VTX with the cable tie. Just a really nice design. There are only canopies you can go for, but I like these canopies from these Speed Racer X Twig quads that they produce, the frames, different sizes. But we did have a problem, if you recall, with our connection there. USB doesn't quite fit, so to get the USB connected, because the hole's just slightly in the wrong place, I had to kind of loosen everything up and pull it out of the way to get the cable connector in there, which wasn't very helpful. So would I necessarily recommend this frame? Not necessarily, even though it is a good frame, and if you buy it you get all the parts, and that's pretty good. But there's some other options that you could go for in this regard. We've already seen, this is the Drone Club pickle, 65mm. This flies really nicely on 2S as well. Quite good flight times. Just running the slightly larger props. It's also slightly lighter, as you can see. There's just less material there. So this is quite a nice little frame. I think I only got this for about £10 from Amazon, so not too expensive as well. Very nice carbon and very strong, which is good. So you could go with that frame, and that has a slightly larger, as you can see, a slightly larger hole there to fit the connections. That's a lot easier to connect. So that might be a better option if you're thinking about that. Certainly a little bit cheaper and easy to get hold of that frame. What else have we got? This is the frame that I would probably recommend. Now this is the Toothpick that's available from Blood's FPV, which is Halo RC, his shop, designed with NJ Tech and Blood's FPV working together. I've got a review on this frame, and this is an excellent frame. I love this frame. But this is using a slightly different flight controller with a side connection for the USB. So if you can get one with a side connection for the USB, that makes life easier still. You can drop the flight controller down nice and low, and therefore lower the centre of gravity a bit more. So I'd recommend perhaps that frame. A bit more expensive, but I'd recommend that frame probably the most out of all these three. But then if you really want to save money, and this is my cheap and cheerful using up old parts build. This is running 1104 motors, just the Eachine cheap and cheerful ones, 2S with a little rubbishy 2S Max 16x16 stack. Yeah, but the frame that it's using, this frame here, which is just a cheap and cheerful one from Banggood, the Eachine one, about £10 with a canopy, a bit more flexible, but quite honestly this is just a little quad that's not mind bashing into things, and that flies okay as well. But if you really want to go cheap, something like this from Banggood, Eachine or whatever it is, frame, this is a lot more flexible, but I'm not really worried about it with this build. So there's that option as well. But as I said, Speed Racer X is excellent. Little Pickle, that's brilliant as well. I would recommend the Toothpick frame, and I'll put links to all of this in the description, all these videos, other options you might want to go for. But there you are. So hopefully enjoy this series of build videos. We built this little guy. The process of building this then can go to all these other builds as well. It's all pretty much the same process. You just have to learn, obviously, different flight controllers will have different pads do different things in different orders. So you just have to look up exactly what the pad does what, and then solder up as you need to. But hopefully you've enjoyed this and at least learned something, got some experience in what we've gone through here, and then you can build your own little quad and go for a rip yourself. And I hope you enjoy flying the little build maybe that you've done. Well, this has inspired you to look at other builds, and maybe you've now gone and built a 4-inch or maybe a 5-inch, something like that, which is much more power, a little bit more money, but you get much more power out of those quads, and you've got a nice GoPro on it, and you're away and enjoying the hobby. So as I said, I hope you've enjoyed this series of videos. I certainly had a lot of fun making it and putting them all together. I've never tried anything like this before, doing a series of build videos. Normally just sort of a one review video, but hopefully they'll all come together nicely. And as always, if you have any comment suggestions, put them in the comment section down below. Maybe give this a thumbs up if you enjoy this series of videos. I really appreciate that. And thanks so much for watching, and maybe I'll catch you in another video in the future. So, bye bye.